Last week, a TV celebrity who was in their 60s died. And I have to admit that it shook me a little bit. Not as much as when Rick Buckler, the drummer of The Jam, died, but pretty close. The reason being, this person, I watched them all the time, every week religiously when I was in my 30s. They were responsible for a lot of the choices that I made when it came to cars. The person that I'm talking about is Quentin Wilson. And in this video, I'm going to share with you the impact that the death of Quentin Wilson had on me and made me realise that there's one thing more important than anything else in life. Quentin died at 68 years of age after a short illness. I checked online to see what it was and it would appear that it was lung cancer. I remember watching Quentin as the original co-host of Top Gear back in the day with a young Jeremy Clarkson, back before they started getting silly and crashing cars and buying things like lovely Porsches and smashing them to bits. The time when they actually drove cars, reviewed them, and people like me actually made buying decisions at the local BMW garage based on what Quentin had been saying. So I was really sad when I heard about the passing of Quentin. When you get to 64 years of age and you hear somebody of 68 passing away, somebody who you feel you know, it does make you kind of think, how long have I got? Have I got 10 years? 15 years? 20 years? Or am I going to be really unlucky like Quentin and not even make it to 70? Well, here's the thing, none of us know. We haven't got a clue when our time is up. However, I do feel that we can do things that might stack the odds in our favour. And I've been particularly mindful of this year. If you've been watching any of my videos, you'll know that back in February I had my gallbladder removed. This was the first time in my entire life that I'd had any health issues. Admittedly, I hadn't been making it easy for myself because throughout my 30s and my 40s, you can't argue that I had a fairly hedonistic lifestyle of eating and drinking and lack of sleep and lack of exercise, all associated with the time when I led my business. And by the time I hit, I guess 50, probably early 50s, it caught up with me. And how it caught up with me turned out to be gallbladder problems. I got gallbladder disease. I didn't know it 10 years ago. I was misdiagnosed with kidney stones, but I had a gallbladder problem which just got progressively worse and worse and worse. And by the time I was in my early 60s, I couldn't eat anything without suffering pain. So all the things that I used to love, pizza, fish and chips, tacos, couldn't eat any of them without suffering pain. I had to move on to a practically vegetarian low-fat diet to do something about it. My experience in my 60s of that whole episode of illness has made me realise that the one thing that's really important in life is your health. Without your health, you are completely screwed. I think you can get by to some extent if you haven't got enough money. You can go and work. But if you haven't got your health, if you lose your mobility, if things start going badly wrong, like they did for Quentin Wilson, then there really isn't a way forward. So one of the things that I started to do only as recently as a couple of years ago was to take my health a lot more seriously. I have to admit, I did wait far too long. Starting at 60 to get your health sorted out is probably leaving it far too late. I did have little bursts of dealing with it when I was in my 50s. My teenage son got into lifting weights when he was about 14, 15, so I used to go to the gym with him. I did that for a couple of years and I saw the benefit. However, even then I was still eating badly. I was still a good 40 pounds overweight, pushing well over 200 pounds. I hadn't really made the effort that I should have done. I'm not a one for regrets. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll know that I have very few regrets. There's one regret that I do have, and that's not taking just a little bit more care of myself in my 30s, 40s and even 50s. But when I hit 60, that all changed. Admittedly, I was forced into it with the gallbladder problem. I bolted on other things. So when it comes to the gallbladder problem, the first thing I did was I obviously changed my diet. I had no choice. I couldn't eat things. When you get pain and agony for the best part of 24 hours after eating something, it does make you realise that you can't eat stuff. That was a fairly strict diet, I'll have to admit. When I was diagnosed in, when would it be, September 2023, and the doctor told me you've got gallstones, I went on a really strict diet. under their advice, and it worked. I didn't suffer a great deal of pain at all whilst I was waiting for my operation. And the one thing that I benefited from in that respect was the weight fell off me. I lost 40 odd pounds. These days I'm around about 13 stone, up to about 13 stone 7, something along those lines. So the weight fell off me and I felt great for that. It was no fun living on broccoli and grilled chicken, but after the operation I continued to be very serious about what I eat. Even though I no longer get the pain, and fortunately I haven't had any of the problems that people warn me about when you have your gallbladder out, running to the loo, not being able to eat fats. I haven't had any of that, thank goodness. Touch wood, I don't get any of it either because I don't want any of that. So right now I'm able to eat pretty sensibly. I can eat pretty much anything. But the one thing I haven't done is I haven't gone back to a diet of fish and chips and pizza and tacos. Those things are very occasional now. Now I just eat really clean, predominantly a Mediterranean diet, and it works. It gives me plenty of energy. It's maintained my weight post-operation, as I said, at around about 13 to 13 and a half stone, and I've never been as light as that ever since I was a man in my early 20s, and it feels great. So that's the number one thing that you can do to ensure that you've got a good chance of surviving way beyond when Quentin Wilson died, and well into your 80s, and hopefully well into your 90s. I mean, my Uncle Archie was going pretty strong up until about 91. He's 95 now. I'd love that. That would be great. No health issues, nothing to really hold you back, and he's still going strong at 91. Who wouldn't want that? So yeah, look after yourself in the context of what you eat. The second thing that I did is that I started walking a lot for two reasons. One, for the physical aspects of it, and two, for the mental health aspects of it. This was walking over and above what I would call your normal walking. And one of the surprises that I found when I moved to this property was how many steps I actually put in just getting about, just nipping to the shops, walking up to the supermarket, which is about 3/4 of a mile away. I was getting about 5,000 steps in just doing that. And these weren't structured walks, these were just daily activities. And when I lived in the countryside in a big house, I was only doing about 2,000 steps a day of normal activities because I didn't leave the house much. And if I did go on a walk, it was a planned walk from the house out into the countryside. So I just didn't get the steps in. But living in the city, I do get the steps. But I've decided to bolt onto that additional steps. I try to get around 7,000-8,000 steps a day in, as many as 10,000. And the way I do that is that I go out on walks. I like to do at least one walk of about an hour into the city, down by the river, having a good walk around, getting away from people. And if you've watched my most recent video, you'll know that I like to avoid people. I get through the city, down to the river and out into the countryside near York, and I do 3 miles, sometimes 5 miles in a big circuit. If the weather's poor and I don't have time for that, I still get out there and do it 20 minutes, quick walk, get my waterproofs on and make sure I do 20 minutes at least 3 times a day. So walking has been absolutely critical. It's so vital. I can't believe I didn't do it before. It's probably the reason why I got up to the weight that I did. As I say, 17 stone. No surprises there given the amount of food I was eating and the lack of exercise. Walking has got a secondary benefit over and above exercise. It's also fantastic for your mental health. The type of walking I really enjoy doing is out and about on my own in the countryside, and I schedule that once a week for 2 to 3 hours. Just me on my own. I get in the car, I drive to a beauty spot, I go for a lovely walk. But the mental health side of that is brilliant. Just getting in nature and just kind of like the awe of it, walking in forests, seeing the wildlife, listening to the birds, sitting down at the halfway point with a picnic and looking at a view and just you and your thoughts. To my mind, there's nothing better. It's absolutely wonderful, and I enjoy my walks in the countryside. The next thing I did in relation to exercise was I started going to the gym. My son got me into it in my 50s, but I let it lapse once he went to university. Once I came back here, I joined a gym, and I now go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week to lift weights. But one of the things that I've done to aid me with my recovery, and the fact that because I'm now 64 I don't feel like I can lift the same as I once did, I now go for a much higher rep range, 12 to 15 reps. I try to do a whole body workout. I'm not into any of those bro splits. For me now, it's a case of getting in there, hitting every body part, doing that 2 or 3 times a week, and making sure that I'm stimulating the muscles. Seems to be working. You know, I might not have big biceps, but I'm strong, everything's good, my legs are good. Weight training, absolutely vital, especially if you are a man. The last thing that I've started to do is prioritise sleep. I cannot get by with less than 6 hours sleep. If I go to bed late, after midnight and I have to get up early for something and I get less than 6 hours sleep, I'm absolutely wrecked for the whole day. I can barely function, so I have to get my sleep. And the other thing is that I'm not a total owl, but my normal bedtime is around about 12 o'clock. I find it very hard to sleep before 12 o'clock. And my natural wake time, because I don't set any alarms these days, is 7 a.m. Once the sun starts to come up, I'll just wake up naturally at about 7 hours. It's very rare that my body will take me to 8 hours, and if it does, I tend to feel a bit sluggish. But 7 hours, absolutely perfect. Within an hour of waking up, I'm full of energy, I'm feeling creative. Back to the first point about food, I have a nutritional breakfast, and I set myself up for the whole day. I neglected my sleep when I was younger. I'm sure we all did. I mean, when you're in your 20s and you're out partying and stuff like that, of course you do. But when I was in my 30s and I was running a business, I seriously neglected my sleep. Even though my natural chronotype is to be an owl, not a lark, I did a pretty punishing regime. I was up at 5 a.m, getting to the office bright and early, staying for 12, 13, 14 hours. Sometimes I was working for 7 days a week. It was no wonder that by the time I hit 44, I was absolutely knackered and burned out. But now that I've hit 60 and beyond, I'm 64, 65 in the next birthday in February, sleep is just non-negotiable. So those are the things that I've prioritised. I haven't prioritised them because I heard about Quentin Wilson. Quentin Wilson just made me realise you can't guarantee anything, but just give yourself better odds. For me, that's cut out crap food, go on long walks, lift weights, and get plenty of sleep. What about you? What's your regime? Please leave a comment. I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to hear what works for you. Share it to help other people. If you'd like to watch more of my videos, I suggest you watch this one next. It's why I try to avoid people after the age of 60. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time.